You might have noticed the posters around town. There's a demonstration happening right now on 2nd Street on the bridge. These are people out here, most of them from Ruckle, and they're affected by this whole buyout thing after the flood. Here it is, 19 months after the flood, and we're still being affected. Hey, Dave, would you like to say something to Facebook?
Oh, geez.
Come on. Dave's never at a loss for words. Come on, Dave.
Peace.
Oh, gee. So?
Here's what I got to say.
We're not flood victims. Okay. We're not asking for favors. There you go. They're not asking for favors. They're just asking for justice.
Somebody tell the mayor of Grand Forks, Brian, to quit talking about us like we're victims, like they're somehow helping us, like we're asking for handouts or whatever it is that he's trying to represent us as. They should just give us what's ours according to the law. That's it. That's all. We don't want anything more than that.
Nice and simple. All right. That's a good question. Why is it everybody else gets for fair market value and not here in BC? We have quite a few people out here. How long is this demonstration supposed to go on?
Just for an hour.
Just for an hour.
The thing is, I believe they understand they have to give us fair market value. The problem that the city's up against now is that fair market value keeps going up.
Right.
Post-flood, what they call post-flood market value, at first was real low.
You
want to edit that?
This is Facebook.
This is Facebook. It was real low. So six months ago,
the truck going by.
That's Jimmy Klinoski in the Spud truck. Hell, I used to drive that truck for Nick Betkov.
Okay, so the problem
the city's up against is when they first found out that they were gonna when the province first told the city that all the province was going to provide was post-flood. That meant a certain number according to the way everybody was thinking at that time. That's 6 months ago, and that was based on appraisals and assessments that at that time were 6 months old. Now it's 6 months later. It's a full year and a half after the flood. The stigma attached to our property values based on the fact that we flooded has pretty much dissipated. The stigma attached to our properties based on the fact that they could flood in the future is caused by the city's decision not to build this dike up and to leave us sitting here vulnerable to flood for however many years it takes for them to get around to come up with the money to buy our land. That value keeps going up. The property values are rebounding. Look at the comps around the city, and I think the city understands that they're in trouble now because they really should have just given us what we were worth at the time. Even pre-flood is going to look like a deal compared to what they're going to end up paying if they pay for all of our lawyer fees, court costs, and everything else the Expropriation Act provides.
And remember, when he says they, he means all of us taxpayers. That's literally what he means.
That's true. That's where the city gets their money is from taxpayers. Now, there's another thing, too. When Brian says his taxpayers won't sit still for borrowing the money, who the fuck are we then? We've been taxpayers on 2 properties here for years, me and my wife, me and Nora. We're taxpayers. Also, he never did ask the taxpayers. He never asked them. He was speaking for them out of turn. We asked a whole bunch of them. We had a petition signed back in the summer. We got hundreds, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't forget how, Jennifer knows the number. It's almost everybody signed it that we approached.
Who's that? Do you know where our mayor is right now? I don't. He's over in Gyro Park having a drumming circle.
Well, good for him.
Isn't that nice?
Good for him.
There you go. Your choice right now as a citizen of the city, if you have the time and you're concerned about affairs like this, is you can come down here. It's up to 1 o'clock.
It's more fun here.
And talk to the people here and find out their concerns and let them know your concerns. Or you can go to Gyro Park and join in the drumming circle that apparently the mayor is in. I don't know anything about that, but that's what somebody just said.
All the media is down here where the fun is.
Well, it's not really a funny subject, but at least it's not pouring down rain on us right now.
You know, I just decided. I just spent 2 nights ago. I spent the night in the hospital.
Really?
My heart was going crazy. My chest was all tight all day long. It wouldn't let up. My blood pressure was out the roof. I'm on blood pressure pills now. And they told me, you know, stress can be a major contributor to this kind of problem. And it just gave me pause. I thought to myself, well, where's the majority of the stress coming from?
Yeah.
And so I've decided I'm doing my best not to get uptight. So I decided I was going to try and have fun here today.
And here I am winding him up. Sorry, Dave.
But that's okay. You know, it's all right. I have to learn how to face the cameras without losing my temper.
Yep.
In the last 6 months, it's gotten worse and worse and worse for me.
And we can understand why. I mean, it's all coming down to short strokes, and you don't see anything on the horizon that looks like what you want, right?
Look, here's the thing too. Grand Forks is setting precedent for how these things are going to be handled in the future. So if we're the experiment that everybody's going to benefit from, maybe everybody in the province could pitch in $1 and send it down here to us folks here and help us get $1 or at least a thank you. We're not looking for favors here. What we would like is to get on with our futures. And in order to do that, we've got to be released from this situation down here. It's gone on too long.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anybody else who wants to speak to Facebook and the world out there.
Hi, Mikey.
He probably covered it all.
How about you? No? Well, it's the typical. People don't really are shy in front of the camera, and I can get that. But that's what's happening down here on the bridge on 2nd Street. The buckle over to Ruckle over here, which all these people are affected by. It may not be theirs anymore, but that still hasn't happened. And they're here till 1 o'clock, and they would love for you to come down and have a conversation with them and hear their stuff and
just drive by and honk your horn.
That's right. There you go. So, you know, they could use your support. They could use your feedback. And really, you don't have to necessarily worry about coming down here if you don't agree. I'm sure that they're reasonable.
That's right.
Okay, that's it. I'm going to try and cut this off now. It's been a long enough time on my data package, and that's something that's happening in Grand Forks today. Maybe I'll go over to Gyro and see if the mayor's over there.
I had them interview me, and I told them exactly what I thought about the dike failure and without permit.
And, of course, the finish button. Doesn't really want to respond.
I told them that
gee. Hope your life is going well out there in the world, and
Yeah.
I love it when this phone doesn't work.
This is Les Johnson. He's our local news vigilante.
News vigilante. Calls me a news vigilante. I don't know about that. Wow. Okay, so let's see if I can switch the camera around while I do this. There we go. So get an idea of what's going on while I try and make this thing stop. "12 people watching." Okay, so
Buyout now!
You've ruined my life and I cannot send counting.
Either brave men or cannon fodder. I never quite sure
it's a hard phone.
Bring some people up to chambers.
There's a lot of different messages here.
Sure.
My main message is stop acting like you're trying to help us. You're trying to buy our land.
I can do some of that.
And I know you.
Everybody can hear you.
Understand that he really is trying to just do it.
This is what we
This
want.
guy
Read the signs.
pissing me off by making it sound as if we're it's a
We should see the sacrifice.
I mean, I like that's if he does it again, I'll see what I'm talking
Quite a bit about that. Understanding what we're saying in that building, so it is important. But yeah. I did get your message. I've been 60 hours this week work, so I haven't had a chance to read everyone. But yes, you'll be able to get.
Hey, Brian. Pissing me off when you go on global and talk about how we're victims and you're just trying to help. This has got nothing to do with flood relief. This has got nothing to do with flood relief. This has nothing to do with It's got nothing to do with that. This is expropriation. And we understand that the city is working hard to do it properly, to do the right thing. And I was ignoring that. We were ready to back off. And then we went on global and we basically called us victims. Stay away from the whole flood thing because it gives the public the idea that we're asking for favors, that we're asking for something special. We're not. What you guys are trying to do is stop calling us victims. Stop referring to it.
I went over that interview and got a handout. Yeah, it's a handout.
I shouldn't have used the example of not being.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. What did I say?
It's just our responses to frequently asked questions that we're hearing. So,
Are these things different than the other?
you know,
Because from 100
there's
and the
more
response-
information every day, so
Graham,
it's
I
all in
wanted
there.
an appointment with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll definitely need to book it, but yeah.
Who do I
Yeah.
call?
So Dave,
Yeah.
what I'm
wanting to clarify.
Like this is really
We are working
upsetting.
within the
That's all I can say.
so we can,
I'm just listening.
You know, Graham has a handout here that I think explains in more detail than I want to get into at this point. But to me, it is a moral issue. You know, it's down to obligation and our ability to do anything.
Well, I get that, but the purpose of the Expropriation Act is to ensure, or one of the purposes, is to ensure that the homeowner remains economically whole. Now, yeah, I think maybe you might be talking about some other kind of wholeness here, which I'll let you fight with that. That's your moral struggle. My concern, and our lawyer's concern, and our lawyer's job is to make sure we come out of this economically whole. The city started this. It is the city's responsibility to see that we are economically whole at the end of it. And I think that's what you guys are trying to do. And I appreciate that. But it pissed me off when
you know, I go back to what underlines the city's decision to do this at all, right? Are we not at that point where you need to know that there are in North Ruckle certain dangers living there?
Stop pussyfooting around. When are we going to get answers?
Would you agree with that? That because of
It's
high
our
waters-
safety you're looking after?
Well,
Is
that
that
is
what
a
you're
factor
saying?
in it when you say that we're doing this.
How are you doing that?
There is
Yeah, you're
definitely
putting my parents in an early grade.
Yeah.
a benefit to the whole of the city, but in fact, that's not the whole picture.
You know what?
So
You know
we
what?
do see a
That saved
moral
that.
obligation to try and get as much as we can.
I'll
from-
give you a
from the
tissue for your
system
tears there, but
we're working
answer our questions.
Yeah.
When? Give us a
When?
straight answer. When
Putting
are we
an
going to get
RFP
an
out.
answer?
Yeah.
Putting an RFP out that limits the amount of compensation.
You know, that's lots. That's lots of.
There's some
Limited the amount of
there's some
compensation.
technical questions that I can't answer here actually. So
You can't answer them anywhere because nobody will give us answers.
That's right.
Every question we ask, you can't answer.
I hear that
Now you guys
usually-
refuse to answer our emails.
Where?
Here's a simple
You're just
question.
gonna ignore us now.
There's
Here's a
a
simple question.
if you let me speak, I can actually answer
It's a
in order.
simple
I will
question.
answer in
Okay,
order,
just
sir.
The
simple
buyout
question.
offer is on my parents' house. Tell me right now.
Okay. You know what the process is? There's
The process
a new
is wait forever. It's been a
a
year and a half.
new appraisal. A new appraisal needs to be
Is
done.
the new appraisal going to be as biased as the old one?
Yeah.
To make sure you save all your money?
The old appraisal purpose was getting a grant. It was not suited for this purpose of going forward.
But that's what you
So-
based your RFP on.
Approach us first.
On the amount of money in the grant.
So I hear that you're really upset, and
Can you hear that?
and
Can you hear
and we've actually heard that all along. Okay.
We've got to go through another
I mean, I'm not
Christmas
choking back
with
tears.
no answers.
I'm pissed
no
off.
clue what's going to happen. Marriages are
killing
falling apart.
us.
Families are falling apart.
We hear that you're really
People
upset.
are
Okay.
That's something to cry about.
I'm
That
not
is
going to be
something
able
to
to
cry
answer your
about.
questions if you keep on interrupting. Can you understand that?
But
Right.
are you giving us answers?
Yes.
Or are you just going to
You've
continue
got
to
your own
circle the
meeting
block here?
coming up. Why
Yes.
are we even talking to you here?
Well, because you came here to ask questions.
Yes, we
So
did.
we
Come
came
on.
out to provide answers.
good.
So we're here to provide answers. So please.
Give us an answer. Give us an
Okay,
answer
so-
to something.
All right, so starting. We are nearly done the RFP, hiring the RFP. I'll get to the technical question in a second.
Okay.
The team will be introduced and be able to hear questions from everybody on Monday the 26th. The agenda of the
Who do
meeting,
they answer to?
They-
Who is the appraisal team answering to? Who is setting the parameters for them?
that will all be clear on the 26th. But here's the bottom line, and I'll talk about the fund value and what their responsibility is. The city is hiring them to be the experts in this case, but it's actually all guided by legislation. And I'm glad, Dave, you mentioned the Expropriation Act, because the Expropriation Act is
So you're
basically...
not going to put a cap on what
No,
they can...
there's no cap on fair market
Okay,
value.
and you're not
No,
gonna
so
have-
the cap is...
They
what
can
the-
appraise away from the scheme, right?
So we'll try to get that question. I don't actually know the answer to that question yet, but it's a good one. All of your questions are good questions, right? So that the cap itself was it's called an upset price, but the idea is if the actual amount of compensation going out goes higher than a certain amount, their price could go up accordingly because it's a percentage value, right? So the cap is basically, for the purposes of the proposal, assume a $12 million fund, base your pricing on that. It gives us cost certainty.
So
But-
you're capping it at that 12
no,
million,
no,
not what the property is
their
actually
fee,
worth.
their fee, not your fee. The cap is their fee. So basically, when you get a big project happening with lots of uncertainty, certain costs could escalate, including fair market value. We don't know fair market value. We only have an estimate and a contingency that
But
we
are
added
you
to
going
the
to go
estimate.
by fair market
Fair
value?
market value, yes, and there's appraisal standards that set uniform standards
money for that?
There's
Fair market value.
please don't interrupt. Okay, so the key is that current market value, and that's important. That's what the funders allow for, current market value. The city has also its responsibility of basically making sure we can afford this, but how can we make up the difference if current market values is more than we estimate? That's our responsibility. That's not on you,
Okay.
right?
How long is this going to take?
Current market
get you a
value,
second.
you're going to have to take comparables from recent sales,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that's not going to be in North Ruckle. That's going to be citywide,
It's-
right?
yeah,
Yes.
Current market
Absolutely,
value.
Yes.
and you know, and recognize I'm not the appraisal expert, but they'll be there to answer those questions on the 26th. So the second part about, you know,
Something wrong with this picture, Brian.
so we had a very fast timeline appraisal done before Christmas in order to get the grant. They had to make what's called extraordinary assumptions in order to actually make that, and we know that some of them
They didn't
Can you give us a
investigate the
timeline
homes,
as
though.
to
They did not come into the homes yet.
So they made some assumptions,
Yeah.
okay? They made some assumptions.
What kind of
Sorry, I didn't-
assumptions? Based on what?
You know,
I
basically,
wanna
because
really know.
They looked at many properties, but it's basically
It's the
they had-
inside where I'm
Yes.
redone inside. There was
Okay.
nobody that came in.
And so
Absolutely
here's
no
what
one.
matters is that appraisal from last Christmas does not matter. It's not
Well, who
useless
did
for-
a fast appraisal?
the- our appraisal company last Christmas did that appraisal so that we could have numbers for
There
the
was
grant.
no one that looked
And
inside my
so what
home.
matters now is the new appraisal. Okay.
Yep.
So you're asking how long it's going to take?
Yes.
How could they approve that grant based on that appraisal?
Because they didn't look
It's a lousy
inside at all.
appraisal, we know that.
on the whole, they actually looked at many properties. Okay, and so it's important
The
to recognize
DMF
that.
people looked at the property.
No,
Or they accepted
the
your
appraisers.
appraisal.
The appraisers.
And the appraisal was bad.
Oh, no, they didn't look at many
know
properties.
Graham,
So,
I want to
I-
understand. I want you to understand that I am fully
What property did you look at? Where are you
fully
going to get an acre and a half for 38,000?
refurbished inside. Alongside of me, I have this.
Yes.
I am not covered for flood.
So,
But the thing is, hang on one
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
And the thing is, beside me, I have people. The yard hasn't been taken care of at all. I stand for getting on fire. Every night that I see this going to bed, you guys haven't taken care of any of my neighbors at all. You should see how they live. And what's beside me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What I want to recognize is that you improved your house. You improved your house, right? You
Yes.
took the resources that you had and you improved the house. That means your current condition is what will be done. The amount that we'll be paying for these appraisals to be done is actually reflecting the high level of accuracy and representation of the true value that's in there. And so that,
The devaluation of our land, you guys created a narrative to devalue our land significantly. Those homes have been bought and sold on that floodplain since the day they were built. I purchased my home on that floodplain only a few months before it flooded, and I knew it had got wet in 2017. There was flood mitigation systems in the home. I know the house was on a floodplain. It's not worth $75,000, $80,000 less land value now.
all right, thank
Than
you.
it was then?
Thank you. I'm recognizing. I know many people got a copy of their appraisal, and it was a very limited piece of information. As you recognize, it was done very fast, but it met the purposes of understanding the grant. So that in order to get the grant amount, what matters now and what determines your market compensation is the new appraisal. On top of the fair market value, the city is also providing land value and title. So above and beyond. So what
You're
this means,
assuming we want that.
assuming you want it, you know, I think the question is that,
It doesn't help the people that have 2 mortgages to pay off, right?
you know, but we can get to how the individual pathways work. But the question of where would the resources come from for making up the shortfall? If a lot of people actually want the land, that will help our case. That will help everyone's case. So it's really important that the land values,
So you might be able to
in-kind
come up
resources.
with
I'm not saying that, but if we know that the more people actually are able to take advantage of in-kind, the better. And
So
also
what comes
respecting.
with the land value though? Do you pay for all the services?
So that's a great question. There's so many good questions. So we want to get grants for extending the sewer mains, water mains, all that kind of thing to develop the sites. We're working on finding the right grants with the province on that.
The people that have lost their home, do they get a home on this land? Or?
So how that happens is the idea is with land value that the amount of money coming through the payout plus other in-kind measures is enough to help make a new home, right? And everyone's going to have their
Where
own
is
individual
this
case.
place? In the swamp across the way?
Well,
Across the way in the swamp?
one thing at a
I
time.
think you did offer
Yeah.
more viable options.
Yeah, there's gravel and
I
there's.
want to
and
know
there's
where exactly this
So if
is.
somebody had an acre and a half, are they going to get an acre and a half?
You know, that's a good question. There's actually
Reed's
come
Hill,
down to
the swamp on the
to
other
value,
side.
right?
I know
Yeah.
they're all good questions. That's
Right,
why I'm asking.
I know. Thank you. So that's a good question. The city has enough, owns enough
We
land.
have sent emails
Yeah.
asking these questions, but you guys won't reply to us, right? So this is why we
Some
need
of
to
the things
ask
they
these.
don't know is because they're going to be working with council to
But the council has actually been instructed not to answer our emails.
not to confuse the situation is what we're asking.
So, and I apologize for any emails not answered, but you do, and I don't want to make excuses, but you know, the volume of information coming in, that's why we actually prepare this, so
But
everybody gets.
when can we expect concrete answers?
Okay, so the next step is that Monday the 26th, and after that, the appraisal team actually still has to do work to build the plan of how this works. But there's people who have immediate financial need who are overstressed, and they'll be able to get the appraisal starting right away from them. This winter is basically the target timeline to get as many of the agreements moving as possible.
Your piece shows March 2021, March
Yes.
31st, 2021. So
Yeah.
that sum is going to get extended out until March 31st, 2021.
I wouldn't expect that many to actually go past it by next summer, but it's the purpose of having the team through that time is because if there's any change in the alignment of the dike or something else, we want to make sure we have their services. The work program is likely to be 6 months. You know, that's my understanding of it right now, but it's like they're.
People that can't afford their mortgage by 2021 are going to be in bankruptcy and living on the street.
And the idea is that
They are now.
So the idea is that we know that people have immediate financial needs already. There's people facing foreclosure, right? There's people who are immediate, and so getting an agreement with them right away,
Prioritizing.
getting the cash amount on the table for them, and still having those other in-kind options on the table, even though the lot's not ready. Perhaps at least they can stay out of insolvency. The other piece that now you asked the question about how would a new title help people. It might not help everyone perfectly, but what we've heard from lenders is that if a mortgage can be ported to another real property, it makes it viable so the bank's not going to want to claw back all the money when they pay everybody if they know there's a viability of a new site. So what we're working on, the assumption is that it's an actual asset that somebody can use for their future plans. Some people will want to try to move their house onto that, and so we'll be bringing in a team that can evaluate the homes, help do the move, and we're looking a way to ease the cost of the new foundation, or especially where they're really strong financial need. All of these different questions are excellent questions if we consider them. So sometimes the answers don't come right away. And there's, I'll get to you right in 1 second, but there was a couple of really good questions over here. So you had one more that I haven't answered yet at this point?
I just
Yeah.
want to know when we're going to get some answers,
Yeah,
right?
so Monday the 26th, and the December council meeting, the whole meeting.
I have to say, Brian's lucky he has you, Graham.
You know,
Because so far we've gotten more from you than we have in 19 months.
And I
That's
want to
ridiculous.
talk a little bit about that actually too. The first 2 months after the flood, I don't know if anyone visited us in the Emergency Operations Center. I
Yes.
recall seeing you there.
My parents were living there. So
Yeah, the immediate aftermath was terrible, and the notion of mitigation was started to be discussed in the middle of June. And so the regional district and the city were looking at, okay, what are our options? Can we rebuild things the way they were? You know, is it an opportunity to find funding for that dike? Is there an option to do something differently here that actually works over the long run, right? And so all of these questions about what to do, you know, should we dredge? Should we put a dam somewhere? Is there a bypass tunnel? All those things were discussed, as well as new dikes. And I really have to be honest with you, because this is upsetting for people. It is actually partly an economic decision about what gets protected and what gets bought out. So people ask, why not downtown? And part of it comes down to the level of investment to move it downtown versus the level of investment to find new homes and make new residential
So you
properties.
could afford it then.
Well, no.
You could afford it then. You could afford and be fair. And be fair,
Thank you.
Graham.
That's a really good point, both
fair.
of you. I love that. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
To make it affordable for the over grant that could fit the thing, and for the city. And so
You essentially used us as guinea pigs to get your grants, right? So now
Yeah.
it's time for the city to pay us, right?
That's a you know, it's a fair comment, and I think
You wouldn't have got the grant without the
We
properties.
think so. We think it had to do with your $2 and $1 ROI. I mean, I would like to investigate that further.
I think it's 3.4.
Why couldn't you have picked, say a piece of farmland just a half kilometer or a kilometer down the river, and then just protect all of our homes, and then let us deal with this with ourselves? Because I don't want to move. I have a pristine, beautiful piece of property on the river, and you want to take it from me. And that stupid survey, or the original assessment, was ridiculous. Like, you want to take my property at way below its value. There's no way. I don't even want to give it to you.
So
Why
that-
couldn't you have picked some farmland?
So that's a really good question. It's probably a good one for a hydrologist to answer. But what the engineers and hydrologists told us is about the backing up of the two rivers. And on the map that's on the front page here, when you look at the flood depths from the 2018 flood, and so the North Ruckle area as a whole, it flooded quite a bit deeper than City Park, as an example.
Because you pumped effluent and shit into our properties.
And disturb the dike. Yeah, disturb
Come
the
to that
dike.
question too. There's so many good questions, and there's time to answer them. But what I want to say is 18, 19 months. So first 2 months were in that immediate flood aftermath, and then starting in July, that's when we started considering these options of is there a different path. Now I'll get to you in a minute. Thank you. Okay.
That's what you told us.
Excellent question.
No, that's what you told us.
Yeah.
We're not even close to that now.
They got paid like in a month.
Yes. Yeah. And
not 25 months.
Absolutely. And another really, really good question. So,
is this a good question?
It is a good question. I'm going to get to it.
You're not surprised?
No. We have heard all of this, and it is really, really important. Sometimes the answers take time to get. So, I was somewhere timeline. I just want to finish this question of where we got through. In July, we had a draft proposal from Don Dobbs that said these are the big picture options. We assembled a group of hydrologists and engineers with independents who said, you know, what is the best thing now and over the long term for risk reduction, for first responders, for not putting them in harm's way in the future flood. The word that we hear about dikes not being impenetrable, this dike in particular was built in reaction to the 1971 flood. It wasn't built for this flood. You know, it was 60 centimeters below this flood at the very peak. It was designed in a way that basically it didn't allow it to hold the water back.
Why wasn't there an upgrade? Why wasn't there an upgrade then?
There was a pole installed that shouldn't have been there?
See, we've heard that raised, and so yeah, absolutely. And many of us have been on site.
There should have been an upgrade, Graham.
Isn't that who you guys pay?
Yeah. I don't even know the answer about. I don't even know the answer about whose pole or whatever, but where the dike, it overtopped and then it breached either side, like basically a couple meters either direction, right? So it wasn't directly where the pole was.
So if they knew this,
I think there was no knowledge that there was any kind of weakness underneath the dike, right? The dike wasn't keyed in, right? The dike was sitting on the surface. Well, 1971. Right? That's what I'm saying.
They tried to walk the machine up. He's got pictures on his phone. He's trying to find it. And created a channel. They put sandbags in that channel, not on the water side, but on the dry side. And if you know anything about water flow, it'll flow from the wet side to the dry side. It caused just a ripple around it, and the whole.
We have an engineering report on the failure of that, and actually, I understand that it's actually not the main purpose of most people gathering here. There's going to be some other chance to talk about that stuff, but really what in July we considered options with a small group and then discussed it with a group of staff and elected officials from RDKB and the city, and then it went out starting with those small group meetings out in the community and that survey last summer. And I'm not, there was no weight attached to that straw poll that happened in that meeting, but there was weight to the messages coming in that if there was a fair compensation, people would consider a buyout option. Consider, right? And that's
fair.
Yeah, and so that, and exactly, right? So that information was enough for council at that time to go ahead and say yes, we should follow through with applying for that grant. So. Yeah, and I've seen the pictures, absolutely. So that information was enough for yeah, and so here, this is the biggest challenge with facing these kind of decisions right after the flood. The grant deadline was January 11th. In order to build a grant proposal for January 11th, we needed approval by council at the beginning of September, and then we had a matter of months to put together a comprehensive proposal that basically took conceptual design through to what could this cost.
That we know nothing about. That we know nothing about. We haven't seen.
That's fair. I think there hasn't been enough information on the proposal.
We've asked for it.
We've asked for it, but we haven't received any word
You understand
of
that.
that. So we don't really know anything about it.
Answer us again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing is lead us into a straight way so that we'd understand. But we don't exactly know. Don't mention that anymore. Because we don't know. We haven't read that. We haven't had that to read.
So I know you haven't read it. So part of the problem is some of the information in there for the grant itself is protected until we have a grant agreement. But then there's several background reports that are actually ready to. We just haven't got them on the website yet. There's 800 pages of reports that went into that, and they provide that background information. And it's a phenomenal amount of work that happened really, really quickly.
Well, forgive us. It's hard to follow you.
I know.
Grayford. It's very hard when you mention that and we haven't read it. Really, it's unfair for us to sit and listen to that.
So
that takes 3 hours of your time to explain about the grant information that we know nothing about, and we've asked for it. We've asked for us to read it.
Thank you.
So
asking
Everything
about
should be put out in layman's terms as well. Don't try and code everything so that we have to have meetings to figure out what the hell you're saying.
And I want to
because I guarantee you, I will be back here to tell everybody exactly what you mean every time.
That's really
because
good.
You're not going to keep pulling the wool over everybody's frickin' eyes, right?
And so you're talking about 19 months, and there's many months. We submitted in January 11th. We knew at the time of at Christmas, right before we submitted, we heard from the federal government current market value only. We asked the province for the shortfall. They didn't tell us until June. So we knew in June, right before the grant announcement.
But as soon as we heard, we made an application.
Yeah. As soon as we heard, we pushed, right. So basically that process, that delay, we knew in June this situation that we're dealing with realizing that this could fall apart if we don't find a better way. So that's when
you doesn't borrow the money, and how come you've refused to borrow the money and just
that's actually that's an awesome question. It needs to be, first of all, a formal decision of council, but we did. They asked us to do some basic analysis on what it would look like, and so because borrowing is a potential thing, this language is very, very neutral, but respecting basically the difference between pre-flood value and the post-flood plus the contingency that we put in. We put in a 17% contingency above that amount because we knew property values could rise, plus people would repair their places, etc. So we put a contingency because we knew the amount would be higher. That difference, that delta, is $4.4 million. And so basically, is not as huge as 6.6. That would have been even a scarier number. So in order to borrow that, we've got something called Municipal Finance Authority. That's how we borrow. It pools the resources of all municipalities across the province. The regional districts basically backstop.
We're all extremely aware.
So I'm glad you looked into this, right? So we've got different parameters. One of them is how much we can borrow. The carrying costs of that, we have our own mortgage stress test. We can't carry more than 25% of our annual income in annual mortgage and financing expenses.
But we can. that correct?
Yeah,
If you don't
but we
come up with the
can't.
money,
Yeah.
you can't, the city can't handle
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah, so I'm going through.
citizens
I'm
can
going through my
on your
answers
behalf.
here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. And I think I'm going to
They're
keep on
really
saying
good questions.
Your wages.
So the first, and actually I can say that my wages are backfilled by Emergency Management BC. So through this flood recovery program, we're getting support for doing the work, which is also, it is really unusual. So the extra time and the sleepless nights and the overtime and whatever else, that's on me. but at least it's not on you.
Well, you're getting paid for it. You're getting paid for it.
Thank you.
You're getting paid for it and well. But for us, it's hard. It's hard for us.
Going great.
So continuing with the message, I'm hearing lots of questions, and I just want to say, how many are we here? There's people who are kind of standing in the cold. We could probably fit in council chambers. Would people prefer to sit and be warm, not have cold? Okay, should we take a 5-minute recess? There's bathroom. Meet back. There's bathrooms up at the top there. So just head on in. The elevator's there. Good idea. Okay, yeah, Daniel's gonna open the staircase. So yeah.